Alright guys, I'm recording this on Friday. My parents are about 2 hours away, so I'm super excited, excuse me, for them to come, and I can't wait. I miss my parents so much. Like, you don't understand how much being 5 hours away is like killing me, because I've always lived very close to my parents, and I'm very close with them. Again, if it wasn't for my parents, I wouldn't be where I am today. So all the thanks to them. Maybe I can convince my dad to appear in a video more than he did in the trip to Mexico. But like, I'm so excited to see them. I miss them so much. This is the first time I've seen them since July. So yes, I'm so excited. Alright, let's see what we get. So today I kind of wanted to talk about civil rights, because that was one of the poll questions I put up, like, would you want me to talk about mental health or civil rights? And I feel like it's kind of important to explain what the civil rights movement is. It's a movement by African Americans to try to get equal standing in the United States. Well, people may argue, well, they have equal standing. You know, the 14th Amendment saying that you can't discriminate against anybody because of where they're born. If they're born in the US, they're automatically a citizen. Yes and no. There's something called Jim Crow in the South, especially, where they would have writing tests, and it wasn't very like simple writing tests of, oh, how do you spell this word, how do you spell that word. No, it was writing tests of like, who is the judge of Birmingham, Alabama, and you may be living in Mobile, so you probably never heard of the man. So it was a lot of that type of stuff that you would see, especially in the South. Actually, Tennessee was the first state to elect a black man to I think it was the Tennessee House. It was either the Tennessee House or the Tennessee Senate. I can't remember which, but he was elected to one of them. And with that in mind, he's the first guy to do it. So it's like, well, what do you do? Well, what ends up happening is after that, this is where you start to see like these race groups come up, and they start attacking African Americans, especially in poor rural areas. And a lot of these African Americans are denied health care, and when you have leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X come in, if you've ever watched X-Men, Professor X and Magneto, that's who they're based off of. So, you have Martin Luther King come in and say peaceful resistance is the answer, while Malcolm X comes in with a philosophy of violence and forcing people to see them for being human, because a lot of times in the South, they weren't treated as human beings. They were kind of treated as like these creatures. Is the best way to describe it, to be fully honest. So it's really crazy to me when, as a historian, reading back through a lot of these files, you'll see like all these crazy things that happen to African Americans, especially in the South. Are we gonna have this fight? Seriously? I need your help to say low so I can. Okay, yay, I get to capture you. Bag. I'm naming it ball, probably. Because Dumpluff reminds me of a giant cotton ball. Yay, I caught it. I caught a hip hop. I'll hop it. Hip hop, hop hip. So anyways, when you have these two men come together, they have two different ideologies, but they really did respect each other a lot. And I have to say, both of them were doing what they thought was right for the community. I agree more with Martin Luther King's ideology of how to deal with these people, because I feel like if you bring violence in to any situation, all you're going to do is breed more violence, and it's going to make it a lot worse and a lot harder for your cause to be taken seriously. Because if you're seen as a violent movement, what are people going to automatically assume when you come into their towns? That you're just going to be violent. If you've never seen the movie Selma about Dr. King, that's a movie I highly suggest watching. It is probably one of the best depictions of King. It's the March on Selma, where he ends up having somebody, in the early movie it shows somebody who disappears, and it's heavily hinted that he's murdered. It is an amazing movie. It really explains everything very well. And do I not have a potion? Yes, I do. I highly suggest that movie. That's like one of my favorite recent movies come out about civil rights movement. Another really good one is Mississippi Burning. If you don't know about that, I'm gonna have to look up the date. Oh, it's a Marie. I want you. Let's see. I'm looking up the date while I'm doing this. I'm multitasking very well. Let's see. No, I don't want Missouri. When you accidentally click on Missouri instead of Mississippi, oops. Ah, I did not mean to kill it. I thought it would weaken it. Hold on. M-I-S-S-I-S-S. Mississippi. I have to look up the, I think it was 1964 if I remember correctly. It's based in, it was filmed in 1988. 1964, yes it was. It was the murder case of Chance, Goodman, and Swanner in Mississippi. So these are three freedom riders. It's based on the true story. Three freedom riders who were traveling through Mississippi trying to get African Americans to sign up to be able to vote. Well, they are going to be chased off the road, abducted by the Ku Klux Klan, and killed. And it takes a very long time for their bodies to be found. I think it was like 2 weeks that they were searching for these boys, and then they found the bodies, and I don't think anybody was actually ever convicted of the murder at the time. I think later on they'll go back and convict a few of the Klan members for this, but it's just like watching that movie, it's heart-wrenching. It's just like the terror these young adults had to go through. They're younger than me. They were in their 20s, like early 20s. So it's pretty crazy just like seeing that, because I don't know, as much as I say, oh yeah, I'd do that, I don't know if I would. I don't know if I'd put my life in danger in that way, and I know that sounds really, really selfish, but at the same time, this was a time where I could have been hunted down and killed because I'm Roman Catholic. So it's like, well, what do? You don't have that protection in the South, especially of people saying, oh, well, it's okay, well, we won't kill you. No, these are people who are trying to kill as many people as possible that are going against their ideology. Once Jim Crow is threatened, the South goes mad. Like, it really does go mad, because you have all these people who are trying to protect Jim Crow because they don't want to lose their control over the people. It's the best way to put it. And that's a horrible way to put it, but it's the truth. They didn't want to lose the control, and the moment in time they felt like they were losing the control, that's the moment in time they started attacking people. And it ends up leading to a lot of murders. In Mississippi and Louisiana and Alabama, you have the bombing in Birmingham. If you don't know anything about that, it's 3 girls at a Sunday school church. Their church is bombed. It's a black church. They die. They're innocent children, and their church was bombed, and they just happen to be there, and they get killed. And what's even crazier is the guy who did it, I don't think he was convicted. They know exactly who did it. I don't think he was convicted because he was white and he was a white supremacist. And like, it kills me looking back at a lot of these historical events where I'm like, why did this person get away with this? Like, why was this allowed? Why did you not stop this? And I know a lot of people go, oh well, it's time. Yes, it is the time. You have to remember that. It still annoys me. It still pisses me off because a lot of times we don't teach about these incidences. I don't remember in any of my instructions being able to say, oh yeah, you should talk about the bombing of the Birmingham church. Like, nobody said anything about it. The only reason why I know about it was because in 8th grade, we were forced to read a book, and I say forced to read a book because our English teacher really sat us down and was like, you're going to read this about it. And I don't think I would have learned about it otherwise in school because our English teacher was smart enough to realize that we needed this information. There's a lot of different things that we don't talk about when we talk about civil rights. We don't talk about the medical wing of it because a lot of times medicine was used to exclude people. I mean, think about the polio outbreaks. When FDR found Warm Springs down in Georgia, he forms it, and he's told his wife, who is like very forward-minded, Eleanor, is told that African American children don't get polio and that they shouldn't be allowed there because it would quote unquote mess up the status quo. Like, really? Does that matter so much to you that you're willing to sacrifice children's lives because it doesn't meet your status quo? Like, how mind-blowing is that? You walk up to the first lady and say, oh, we can't treat these children here because their skin color is different than everybody else in the town and it caused ruckus. Well, she didn't let that go. She fought and got it opened up to African American children. It was believed that African Americans could not contract polio. And yeah, they can. Hate to break it to you, Sal, but they can. Which, like, to me is crazy because you have AIDS and HIV attributed to gay men and drug users, but polio can't be attributed to African Americans when any child was able to get it. Like, come on, man. And it's just crazy to me because a lot of times when we look at cases of killings, of like murder, I've recently started listening to books where they're talking about like how certain murderers get away for longer periods of time. And most of the time it's because they are able to, if they're murdering minorities, the police don't look at it as closely, which annoys me because, you know what, that's not fair to the minorities. It's not like, oh well, their lives mean less. No. And it's gotten a lot better. This book was written back in the early 1990s, but it only profiled like killers before the 1970s. So it has changed, and the author does recognize that. He's actually a former FBI agent. But like, come on. Like the Atlanta child murder cases. The guy who's convicted of it, people claim that he was railroaded and that he actually didn't kill these children. I find it pretty hard to believe because the police caught him on the bridge throwing something into the river and then a body was found. So I don't entirely believe that he's completely innocent. Maybe he just murdered that one child and everybody else just so happened there was another serial killer out at the time. But I wish that we taught that in school. Like we talk more about like these cases of mass destruction that we do against each other all the time. I don't want a GOD, but what about catching him? I didn't address catching the stand true either, just because, you know what, I'm on a roll, I'm talking about civil rights, and I didn't want to lose my train of thought. Sometimes it's very hard to get back. But I have to say, I do love studying civil rights. I love understanding what civil rights are and why they need to be protected, and they do. I mean, honestly, we all have the right to be who we are. We all have the right and the privilege, in a way. I say privilege just because here's the simple fact. When you look at our nation, you have the right to choose who you want to be, where you want to go to school, and there are places around the world where people don't have that ability. And sometimes we forget that. I mean, a lot of times I forget that too. Like, I'll complain about things that I really shouldn't be complaining about because there's people in this world who are suffering much worse than we are. And I feel like sometimes reminding myself of that by looking at the civil rights movement, by looking at how my forefathers fought for freedom. Like my great-grandfather who was in Ireland, he was pretty much kicked out of Ireland because he saw a English captain do something completely wrong, and because he was Irish, they told him either you get out of the country or the world will accuse you of being IRA and arrest you. Like, that's crazy to me that even happened. We still have our property over in Ireland. My grandfather and my great-grandfather had to flee. They had to come to the US because if they didn't, they would have been accused of being IRA and they probably would have been hung. And like, my grandfather, who's my dad's dad, he fought for a nation that hated him. My grandfather, we're Roman Catholic. During that time period, people hated the Roman Catholics. They thought we were the most evil of evil, that we listened to the Pope, that we ate babies, that we were planning on taking over the world, Like all this crazy stuff that was told about us. And my grandfather chose to enlist during World War II, and instead of doing like what his brothers did, like one brother served in the FBI, one was he did maps for the Navy. My grandfather was a pilot. My grandfather was a radar specialist who navigated them in to do the bomb runs. One of the most dangerous jobs in the Air Force, well, the burgeoning Air Force during World War II. Like, I still have his maps. I still have everything. And I mean, it's just crazy to me that he did that because he was fighting for a country that hated him. He knew they hated him. It wasn't very hard to look during the 1940s to find anti-Roman Catholic sentiment anywhere. So he fought for a country that hated him. And he didn't die, of course, because my father was born, but he fought for the country. He loved America. He believed in America. And I guess that's what makes me believe a little bit more sometimes, that no matter what, we are a great nation. We have our problems, but we are going to be okay. I don't believe that we're gonna ever fall apart. I don't think this great experiment, as Lincoln put it, is ever going to fail because we have each other. We have the love that we have for each other. And I honestly believe, yes, we need to work 100% on civil rights. We need to work to make sure that civil rights are protected, but we also need to work to have outreach, to have understanding of other people's cultures. Like, you've seen the podcast I do with AA. We come from two different backgrounds, and a lot of times we agree, a lot of times we disagree, but we talk it out, and we'll explain to each other why we agree or why we disagree. And that's because we both understand the cultures that the other person is coming from. And, like, I understand how much harder it is. Because one of my best friends is mixed. She's Italian and black. Like, I understand how much harder it is sometimes to have that background because people just look at your skin tone and they judge you by that. They don't judge you by the merits of the work you do. No, they judge you by what color your skin is. And I find that ridiculous. Like, never judge somebody by their color, the color of their skin. Like, no, you should judge them by what they're able to do on their own, what they're able to achieve on their own. Because great men come in all colors, great women come in all colors. And I feel like once you start judging people on the color of their skin, you lose half the great people in the world. Like, it kills me. It kills me when I hear people say, oh, well, you need to be more sensitive. No, you need to understand where people are coming from. You don't need to sit there and say, oh, well, I'm sensitive towards such and such thing. No, you have to show it in action. Like, Abe and I have had this conversation about, like, colorblindness, where he knows that I understand his culture. He knows I respect his culture because a lot of times when I get confused on something, I don't assume the internet's right. I'll go to Abe and I'll be like, I don't get why so-and-so said this, and I'll show him the video and he explains it to me and I'm like, oh, that makes more sense. And it's just like, you have to understand, you have to be able to speak to people. You have to get where they're coming from. It's not just what you believe, it's about what actually is there. And I know it's harder because I will fully say when I got out of college, I thought I understood everything about Native American culture. I don't. I respect Native American culture. I try to study as much as possible, but I will never say I'm an expert because I'm not. I can tell you all about Irish culture or Italian culture because that's what I grew up with. I mean, for Italians, every Sunday is a very important day, not just because we go to church, it's also because that's the day that everybody in the family is supposed to get together for a big Sunday meal. We've done this since I was like 4. I have memories of my grandmother just cooking giant vats of gravy and meatballs and pasta and just like eating all of it. So it's just like crazy to me. Like, I can explain that all day. Perfect. I cannot tell you anything like from personal experience about like Latino culture, even though recently we found out my great great grandmother, she could have been from Spain. I don't know anything about the Hispanic culture of Spain because we didn't celebrate it that way. I only know the Italian part, sorry. But I mean, I can tell you stories of my mother throwing things at me, so I know what la chancla is. But it's different. I mean, also Italians and Spanish are pretty close linguistically as well, but like we have different customs, and I will never say, oh, I understand Latino culture. I know how to do Zumba. I know how to, you've got to be kidding me. Okay, hold on. Be right back. Let's see if I can win this battle. But I won't ever claim that I understand people who have like true hardships, like hardships worse than I have been going through, because I haven't. I have my family who support me fully and that have really helped me out through this hard time. Like, even though I've had a lot of issues with money recently, my father is still more than willing to help me out any way he can. And I have to be thankful for that, because both my parents went through really bad money times, and I don't know that pain. I don't know the feeling of being afraid of losing your house. I can't say I understand. You can explain it to me, but I will never have a personal experience with that. Well, not now. Up to this point, I should say. You don't never know what the future's gonna hold. But I mean, the whole thing is like, I don't ever want people to assume that I'm gonna assume that I understand exactly where they're coming from. If I can relate, I will relate. But if I don't want to say, oh, I understand where you're coming from, when I really don't. Because that's not fair to anybody. Oh, we're getting bird. Bird's close. Bird may evolve soon. Just depends. I'm trying to get to the next town before the episode ends. Because you know what? I want to get, and I got an awakening. I need to do last battle. Let's see. And then we have 2 apricots. Let's keep going. Yay, we made it to the next town with the slow pokes. We'll do that next episode. But yeah, I just wanted to make this before my parents came, and I can get this out on Sunday or Monday. Actually, I have Monday and Tuesday off of this week, and then Wednesday and Thursday I could stream after I get home from work. But other than that, yeah. So I'm gonna stop it here. We're gonna heal, and then I'll stop it. How about that? So I'm really super excited. We're gonna go to the Atlanta Zoo. I'm taking them to the Natural History Museum here too as well. So I'm super excited to see my parents. It's been too long since the last time I saw them. And I can tell you, I can't wait to see them, guys. They're gonna be here in about an hour and a half, hopefully, traffic permitting. So Atlanta traffic permitting, because I live on the north side of Atlanta, so they have to drive through the city to get to me. So it kind of sucks for them. So I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.